Singing like that will make you feel like you can sing, even if you can't sing. I'm telling you, I was getting my praise on. I love, love, love that song, and I love, love, love that verse. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and never faint. I love that passage of scripture because it is so inspirational. And I tell you, every time I think about that eagle, um, and the power in the wings of that eagle, in that when that eagle comes down into the valley to hunt for food, if he detects any kind of a danger, trouble around him, he can just spread them wings and he can be up off the ground with one flap of his wings. I'm telling you, we are eagles. We are eagles. We who are believers, we are definitely eagles, which and God has provided us with wings to soar. And if we just trust and believe God, when trouble comes around us, we can just spread our wings and flap and get up off the ground and escape our troubles. It's all a matter of your faith and trusting and believing in God and knowing that God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in our time of trouble. Well, 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 it's time to pause for the calls. Y'all know what just happened. Lady Ann just checked in. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Lady Ann. My girl, my boo, my partner in ministry. And for those of you all that don't know, that's my wife I'm talking about. Love her dearly, appreciate her to the utmost. And we just honor her every time we get an opportunity to praise God. I know some of y'all probably was getting your praise on while the music was going, and some of you that might be still getting ready for work or whatever, you grab your brush and maybe made you a fake microphone and you got to singing and performing for yourself. Okay, I know somebody did that. Y'all not going to admit it, but somebody was doing that, getting your praise on. It's all right. It's all right. Every now and then, I'll still lip sync. And feel like I'm in the mix of what's going on at the time. I feel like I'm right there in the mix of that recording. But I'm telling you, I just love, love, love music that moves you. You know, there was a couple of things that I want to talk about briefly before I get to the subject at hand this morning. A couple of things going on in our news that I think we need to be aware of. The jury has been seated in the Ahmaud Arbery case. That's the case we're in down in, I believe, South Georgia, that the young man was out jogging one morning and there were some new homes going up in the community. And he stopped to take a look inside of one of these incomplete new homes. It was under construction. Now, first, let me say that what he did happens all the time. People see homes under construction and they just kind of go in and take a peek and kind of get an idea of the layout of the home, particularly if they are a home buyer themselves. There's nothing against the law that I know of with the person doing that. As a matter of fact, I believe that builders to some degree welcome that. Of course they don't want you going in there trying to take anything or steal anything, but at the time there was nothing in there to steal or take. The young man just stopped and decided to go inside and see what the layout of this new home was going to be, what the floor plan was like. I do it all the time, or at least I was doing it when Lady Ann and myself were in the market for a home. Before we built the home we are living in now, we would go in and just kind of get to familiar with the builder and some of the layouts that they use in their homes. And I'm quite sure this is what this young man was doing. But more importantly than that, he was just out in his neighborhood for a morning jog, or after whatever time of day it was when he was jogging. And the three white men saw him. They spotted him. They chased the young man down. And at first, they wrestled with him or whatever, but then they shot him. They took his life. And now they've been charged with murder, if you will, homicide, however you want to frame it. And the jury has finally been set for their trial. But I have a problem with the seating of the jury. I have a problem with the makeup of the jury. And for me, this makeup of this jury further reeks sense of injustice yet being carried out. I know we've just gotten to the seating of the jury, but there's a problem with it. Here it is, 3 white men on trial for killing a black man. There are 12 jurors selected, and out of the 12, only one person on that jury is African American. Only one black on the jury. There's a problem, especially when the makeup of the community is that every 1 in 3 persons in that community is black. Every 1 out of 3 persons in that community is black. Hear what I am saying. If that being the case, there should have been at the least 4 black people on that jury, serving on that jury. There's no way in the world this should have come out the way it is. Many of the blacks who showed up for jury duty were ceremoniously dismissed, likely because of the color of their skin. Now, some people might say, well, you can't really say that that's what the case is or not. Thank you, Rochelle. They disqualified black jurors by asking them if they are afraid to die at the hands of a white person. That's a stupid question. That is a stupid, yes, I said it, and I said it exactly the way I meant it. If they're afraid of dying at the hands of a white person. Listen, people are afraid to die at the hands of anybody. Red, yellow, black, and white. That was a stupid question. And if that question was one of the questions that was allowed to dismiss potential jurors, our justice system needs a whole lot of repair. It's a problem. But here's the thing. Even now, the presiding judge stated that the imbalance of the jurors as it pertains to race, it just didn't seem right. He even stated that it has overtones of racism, if you will. That's basically what he says. But then he comes back and says, but he has no judiciary authority to override the jury selection, how the jury has been seated. Well, that doesn't make any sense to me either. I know it's probably the law, and he knows it much better than myself. But from what I understand about judges who preside over certain trials, they do have certain authorities and certain liberties wherein they can disqualify certain things or mandate adjustments to certain things. Those of you that are lawyers or have some kind of legal background, you know what I'm trying to say. You could probably say it much better than myself. But it doesn't make sense to me how on one hand, these authorities or powers that be have so much liberality with regards to making unilateral decisions. But when it comes to other things, they are so bound by the law. Well, if that's the case, then we need to find a way to change some of these laws. One of the defenses that these defendants are using, their attorneys are using, is the citizens arrest law, which is antiquated, outdated, and since has been pulled off the books. Have been pulled off the books because of the fact there was no justice in these acts. That law was literally likely given to give citizens the liberalness or the freedom. That's the word I'm wanting to find. There is the freedom to execute or exercise authority over people who they deem lesser than themselves. For example, it just made things a little bit more free for things like this to happen. You know, wherein white people can just come along and do whatever they desire to do or think or deem necessary toward black people, regardless as to how unjust it may appear to be. They've got the law that's covering them, you know, and protecting them from prosecution. It's just not right. And I'm sorry, but I still believe that the reality is white people get away with much more today than black people. You put black people in the same situation and they wouldn't have a chance. From ABC News, before final jury is seated, attorneys get to take turns eliminating a significant number of prospective jurors from the final pool for virtually any reason. That's a shame. I don't like you, so you're dismissed. You're the wrong color, so you're dismissed. You don't look right, so you're dismissed. You're not educated enough, so you're dismissed. You live in the wrong community, so you're dismissed. That's a shame. If prosecutors or attorneys have the right to just ceremoniously dismiss people like that, then why even waste their time calling them down there and putting them in a juror pool wherein many of them have to make adjustments in life, such as take off of work, you know, and the compensation that you get for serving as a jury, it's a joke. Give you $15 a day. And you better pray you don't have to spend money on parking. It's a joke. You want to inconvenience people's lives and then ceremoniously and arbitrarily dismiss them simply because they don't line up with your personal preferences. You know, it's just sad. I agree with you, Tiffany. It isn't right. But then we're tripping and turning it into a race issue. Well, like you said, because it really is. It still is. It is a race issue. I know what she was stating is that people will say, people of other ethnicities say, oh, y'all gonna make this out of a race issue? Well, it is a race issue. It absolutely is. And we are still being treated as less than within our society. I'm sorry, if that doesn't bother you, then something must be wrong with you as an African American person, as a black person, however you want to identify yourself. I'm just saying, as a non-white person, that ought to bother you, and it's not getting any better. It's only getting worse with every trial, with every situation. I mentioned a few weeks ago about the police officer that was exonerated, the one who shot the black man in the back 7 times, when all the black man was trying to do was walk away. And he's going to use the defense, I thought he was reaching for a weapon. Our justice system is broken. And anybody who says that it works, you must have blinders on. You have to have blinders on if you say that the justice system works. It doesn't work. It's rigged. It's rigged against people of color. Now, let me state for the record, and those of you all that know me, you know this statement is very true and sincere. I love people. I love all people. I love people of all colors. I live in a neighborhood where there are blacks, whites, Asians, right here in the very block that I live in. There's a couple of black families. There's a few white families. There's an Asian family. And so, I get along with my neighbors. I appreciate my neighbors. I had a family. We had a family that lived next door to us for years. White family. And they were some of the best neighbors I've ever lived next to. We've ever lived next to. They were wonderful neighbors. And here's what's crazy. When they moved, they purchased another home, and they moved on with them and their children. And the last day, on their final day of packing up, they came over and rang our doorbell, and we invited the whole family in, and they stood in our home and shed real tears, telling my wife and myself how much they loved us, how much they appreciated us, and how much they were going to miss us. And we expressed those same sentiments. I'm not making this up. And even now, when we have the privilege of running into each other in public, there are hugs and pleasantries exchanged. Even their children, their son, 17 years old, came through the neighborhood not long ago. He saw me out cleaning my car, and he stopped and got out, and we talked for a while. He said, "Man, I miss you guys so much." And I told him we miss you too. Absolutely. So there's no prejudice going on here. But the reality is, I guess what I should say here is that we shouldn't hold every white person responsible, thinking that they feel the same way that those who don't care much for people of color feel about us. Don't put that on all white people, because it's just not the case. I'm not going to buy into that. Anybody who tries to sell me that, I'm not buying it. I'm not receiving it. There are white people who are a part of our lives who we love very, 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 very dearly. But this nonsense that I'm referring to this morning with this case has got to stop. It's got to stop. We've got to find a way to turn this thing around. And the only way we're going to do it is that we're going to have to come together on this common issue without having any kind of infighting among us. We've got to be able to agree that we've got to stand together and do whatever it takes to fight against these kinds of injustices. I'm really, really skeptical about how the outcome of this trial is, what it's going to be like, how this thing is going to turn out. And right now, I don't have a lot of confidence that this family is going to receive the justice they deserve. I'm not confident. Now, it could be I might be totally wrong in this instance, and I hope I am. I hope this family receives the justice that they so rightfully deserves. But in my opinion, it isn't looking good, not from the start. Not to me. Somebody needs to show me a different perspective before I will believe that there's, some sense of hope there for having the right outcome in this situation. Let me shift gears here. I want to bring up another situation. It's even sadder, if you will. Well, I guess not necessarily, because both situations involves the loss of life, which is never good. But I don't know how many of you have heard about the instance with the professional football player Henry Ruggs III, who's wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders, now a former wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders, because on the other day, he got in his car his sports car and went speeding through the streets of Las Vegas, ran into the back of a car that was occupied by a 22-year-old young lady who did not survive the crash. Sad, sad, sad. First of all, let's start here. The young man was tested and proven that his alcohol blood limit was 2 times over the legal limit. He was 2 times over the legal alcohol limit for driving. He was drunk. He was really drunk. Furthermore, he got in this machine and used it as a deadly weapon, if you will, unintentionally, but you can't deny the outcome. Speeding 156 miles an hour through the city. 156 miles an hour. First of all, why in the world does anybody need to drive that fast? Well, it was because he was drunk. He was drunk. He simply had way too much to drink. Now, I'm going somewhere with this, and some of you may not agree with me or agree with my conclusions concerning this whole situation, but it is a reality nonetheless. Think about this. Now, President Biden just announced a new mandate for businesses in that they must ensure or mandate vaccinations for everyone within their company, businesses that have 100 or more employees must make sure that all of their employees are fully vaccinated. Or at the least, they have to be tested on a regular basis. He did this by executive order. With the stroke of a pen, he was able to put this mandate in place. Okay? Somebody says he's the president, he's able to do so. I guess so. All right? That's fine. I'm okay with that. Here's what I have a problem with. While we're able to mandate that people take vaccinations, which they are opposed to, why in the world that we can't put mandates in place? And we say we have them, such as the law, but this is another law that's just not working, wherein people can go into establishments and drink all they want to, and yet be able to go and get in a car and drive it while they're impaired and take the lives of innocent people. Now, again, you might say, well, they do have DUI laws in place and all of that kind of thing. Yeah, they do. But how well are they working? How many lives are being preserved by this DUI law? The reason why they won't tighten down on these DUI laws is because the government makes too much money on the sale of alcohol. Just about everything that is done socially nowadays is centered around drinking. I know I'm making some of you very uncomfortable because you enjoy your libations. Okay? But let's be honest about this. There are way too many lives being lost to drunk driving. And a lot of times, that drunk driver, he will have done his damage or done her damage and ruined the lives of other people by the taking of a life through their reckless driving. You know, someone has to lose a loved one, or someone becomes critically injured, permanently disabled, no longer has the ability to provide a living for their family. The person who was drunk and got in that vehicle and caused the accident, most of the time, they come out physically unscathed. That's another thing I can't understand. Think about all of these accidents with drunk drivers. Rarely, I mean rarely, is the drunk driver injured or critically injured or even lose their life. Rarely do they lose their lives. Very rarely. But the victims of their carelessness and irresponsibility always come out on the bad end of the situation. Yet the person who has acted so irresponsibly and is the cause for someone losing their life, they go to court, they get a good enough lawyer, they basically wind up with a slap on the wrist. Especially depending on how much money they have available to them or who they are connected to. Sometimes justice isn't about the scales being balanced. It's more about how much an individual can pay. We know that people pay to get out of trouble all the time, despite the fact they may be guilty. Never have to do a day in jail. Oh yeah, every now and then they'll slap a few fines on the person and what's the phrase I'm trying to mandate restitution. That's what I'm trying to say. They'll tell the perpetrator or the violator that they're going to have to pay a certain amount of restitution. But restitution can't bring back the life that has been taken because of their carelessness. Fines that are paid don't necessarily go to the family of the victims or the victim themselves. The fines are generally paid to the city or the government for the sake of restoring or recovering any financial loss that the city may have suffered as a result of having to have the accident scene cleaned up, sending law enforcement officers to the scene, and all that kind of stuff that takes place with regards to investigating the accident. But where is justice for the victim or the family of the victims? How is it that we, by the stroke of a pen, that our government, by the stroke of one pen, not by the vote of the people, but the stroke of one pen, can so quickly mandate certain things with regards to the lives of people, but yet when it comes to other things, more critical things, more important things, no, it takes jumping through all kinds of hoops. There's too much red tape that one has to cut through. And please understand that what I'm saying here is not a referendum against vaccinations or anything. That's not my point. My point is how quickly, and I've made this point before, how quickly government can move on some things and drag their feet or totally dismiss other things. And it's always at the expense of ignoring the needs of a certain group of people, and that certain group of people more often than not happen to be African Americans. Now, that's just true. I don't care which way you turn it. And something has to be done about it. It really needs to be done about it. Now, people who are in the political arena would say, well, you have to get out to the polls. You have to vote. Okay. I understand that. But at the same token, those whom we vote into office need to be true to their word, true to the platform that they campaigned on. If they're making promises to help fix what's broken in our legislative bodies, they need to be true to who they say they are. No longer can we afford to put people in office and then sit by and watch them do a 180 on what they promised to do and not fulfill any of their promises once they get into office, and then turn around and reelect them the next term. No. I'm going to tell you, I'll be honest with you. If I vote for a politician and I vote to put them in office because they ran on a certain platform and they made certain campaign promises, and I believed that they said that they would do what they said they were going to do, and they get into office and don't perform or don't deliver, when they come up for re-election, they don't get my vote. I don't care what color they are. I don't care what's their party affiliation. If you prove yourself to be a liar, it's one thing for a person to think you're a liar. It's an entirely different thing for a person to know you're a liar. Or if you didn't deliver, you better have a very good provable reason why you didn't deliver on your promise. You know, I didn't mean to stay this long on this subject matter, but y'all know how I do. Every now and then I get in on something and it's kind of hard to turn it loose. And I see you all have been very active in your comments in the chat room. And I'm agreeing with a lot of your comments. I wish I could read them all, but you've been putting up some very good comments, such as this one. Christy Whitaker, the pastor of the establishment, can be held responsible for serving a drunk person if they know that the person is drunk and caused an accident. Yeah, I understand that. That's right. The owner of the bar or whatever establishment that person got drunk in, they can be held liable to a certain degree. They can be sued. They can be lose their liquor license depending on how many violations or occurrences that they have on record. That is so true. But again, how often do people go through the process of suing the establishment? Why in the world, once again, is there not a hard, fast limit to how many drinks any person within their establishment can have at any given time. I mean, that ought to be a rule. No one should be able to just sit in an establishment and drink and drink and drink and drink and drink all night. That shouldn't happen. We can create laws for everything else. Why not create laws for something such as that? Well, we're not going to do that because a whole lot of money would be lost if we did that. It's sad. You go to a lot of these sporting events, and people are just drinking beer by the kegs almost. Drinking liquor by the kegs almost, if you will. And it's obvious that they're drunk. And then they're allowed to leave the stadium, leave the arena, go get into their cars and run the risk of taking the lives of innocent people. That's right, Pam Stone. She said because it cuts into the millionaires' pockets. That's the reason why they're not going to stop it. There's almost as much money made on the sale of alcohol at sporting events as comes from the tickets themselves. That's the reason why the concessions are so big. Wow. But here it is. It's sad. I feel for this young man's family, and my heart goes out to these young men who go from almost straight poverty in many cases to overnight becoming instant millionaires by the contracts that they sign. And because they've been deprived of so much in life prior to them signing these contracts, they feel like that once they have access to the financial resources that they've always dreamed of, they believe that it's time to totally live it up. I've got to go for the gusto. I have to get it all while I can. And one of the reasons why this is the mindset of NFL players is because those guys go in knowing that the average time for a player in the NFL is only about 3.5 years. Now, a lot of us probably didn't know that because we get acquainted with certain stars, and it seems like certain stars or superstars within the sport, it seems like they're around forever. Everybody knows the name Tom Brady because of how long he's been around. Everybody knows the name of Patrick Mahomes because of the phenomenal things that he does while he's on the football field. But there are others who have been in the NFL whose names are not as well known. And most of the time, in many instances, those unknown players only hang around 3.5, maybe 5, 6 years at the most. And so they conclude that since their career is potentially going to be very short, then they need to grab it all while they can, and they make poor decisions. Man, I have prayed on so many times that I prayed that I could just take many of these young players, the Chiefs players in particular, take them under my wing, just be a mentor to them. Not wanting to go after their money or anything. No, that's not the motive. But to be able to be able to mentor them and give them wise counsel with regards to how they can conduct themselves. I've had the opportunity to do that with a few of the Chiefs players in the past. But the reason why I say that is because it's so easy for these guys to get into trouble. And they need a voice of wisdom and reason. And sometimes that voice of wisdom and reason doesn't always come from family members and close friends, because once that person makes it big, those family members and close friends at times get dollar signs in their eyes, and they feel as though they're about to benefit greatly from the success of this ball player. And they're not willing to say things that might rub that individual the wrong way, because they feel like that their access to that person's resources might get cut off. When people are benefiting off the lives of other people, those who are benefiting off those lives will say whatever they think that person wants to hear. It's just a reality. And these young men need someone who will just tell them the flat truth and not worry about how they're going to respond or react to it. Some of them grew up without fathers, and they need a father figure in their life. And the coach can't cover everybody. And it's because they lack that type of discipline, that type of care and concern in their lives. They go off and do something crazy. I feel bad for this young man, because the reality is, more likely than not, his NFL career is over. More likely than not. Now, there's always a chance, there's always a possibility that he may be given another opportunity, but these days and times it's probably highly unlikely, because people are so unforgiving. And depending on the outcome of his legal matter here, it might be over anyway, because according to reports, he has a potential of having to serve anywhere from 2 to 20 years. And believe it or not, 2 to 3 years can almost be a death sentence in the NFL. You go missing for that long. You become inactive for that long. Now, there are some exceptions to the rule, but more often than not, it becomes a death sentence. Well, once again, I wasn't intending to hang out that long on these subject matters, but it is what it is. We at times need to have real talk like this and address some real issues. I pray that if you all that are viewing right now, those who will view later, if you have family members that have the potential to break into professional sports, if you have any kind of influence in the life of that individual at all, please urge them to seek wise counsel, to get someone who can mentor them in the right things and in the right way to do things. They need life coaches. They need financial coaches, and not just football, basketball, baseball coaches. They need coaches that can really, really help them to navigate through life successfully. They need coaches that will help them to transition from a life of poverty to a life of abundance. That takes people who possess wisdom. Thank you for pointing this out, Jackie. She says Andy Reid's son did it too. Yes, sad. Ruined the life of a family, ruined the life of a little girl because he was under the influence, left the stadium. Arrowhead Stadium, had drinks, had other things in his system, from what I understand, what is reported. I think I heard that it was reported that he had um, some type of medication that he had been taking as well. Nevertheless, we know that alcohol contributed to that accident, as reported. Alcohol contributed to the accident, and there's a beautiful young girl who's now having to make severe adjustments to life simply because he acted irresponsibly. And he's not what I consider to be a young man in the sense of these young players. He was the coach on the team, you know, and that's just as sad as well. But again, if you have access to young men who are aspiring to be professional athletes, and some of whom has the potential and even may make it, please, 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 please advise them. Get you a life coach. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a life coach, but get someone who can speak into your life and help you to make the right decisions. That's what you should urge them to do. Praise God. Uh, I would love to be able to do that, Jennifer. You know, I'd love to be able to speak into the lives of these young men. Uh, I long to do it, but it's a matter of just getting the opportunity to do so. And if I ever get the opportunity, trust me, I'm going to seize the opportunity. Well, that's all I have for today. I wanted to go another direction. I intended to go another direction, but apparently these issues needed to be discussed. They needed to be a part of the platform this morning. Michelle, marijuana and alcohol are part of the same money-making agenda. Marijuana has put a lot of Black and brown people in prison. Now states and the government can benefit from the legal sales. So true. I agree 100%. And back before it was legalized, once again, African Americans got much stiffer punishment for being caught with illegal substances than whites. Just another example of the injustice or the injustices within our legal system. They're being perpetrated daily upon African American people. Now, let me say this before I just bail out here. One way that we can avoid some of this is that we simply do the right thing ourselves. You know, yes, there are times where we are unjustly accused, falsely accused, and even convicted on false accusations. The young man, his name escapes me right now, the one who's been in prison for the last 40 years here in Kansas City. He's been in prison for the last 40 some odd years for triple homicide, which prosecutors say now it has been proven that he did not commit those homicides. Yet the judicial system is slow and even reluctant with regards to releasing the man, even after serving 40 some odd years. Despite the fact that the people who actually committed the murder said he was nowhere around, had nothing to do with it. They confessed to it. Despite the fact that the main witness against him recanted her testimony. Despite all of that, this man is still being held. Where is the justice? Where is the justice? If he's innocent, if you feel like you have all of the evidence and the needed statements that would suggest that he had nothing to do with it, let the man go. But no, our judicial system, we've got to go through all of these, jump through all these hoops, cut through all this red tape, try every legal maneuver in the book to keep him held, incarcerated, keep him bound, away from his family, away from his people, away from freedom. It's sad. All right, I'm going to end on that note because y'all know I could go on and on and on with this type of discussion. And again, y'all are putting some very valid comments up in the chat room, and I appreciate all of your input and all of your comments. It's what we do here on Morning Mocha. Love y'all so much. I look forward to being with you all on tomorrow morning, and maybe tomorrow morning I'll get to what I was wanting to talk with you about today. How about that? God bless you all. As I often say, my desire is that you have a blessed, wonderful, and even prosperous rest of your day. God bless.